Hey everyone, welcome to the Flutter development series from Roman Just Codes, where I'll be developing beautiful user interfaces with Flutter. And in this video, I'll be creating custom stateful widgets in Flutter while developing the details page widget for this app. In this series, I'll be building the UI for a fictional grocery and produce app, and for this episode, I'll be covering the creation of the details page widget, as well as creating custom stateful widgets that match my design. I'll be adding more highly customizable and reusable widgets to my app, and I'll reuse them across the application. We have a lot to unpack in this episode, so let's hit the ground running. As always, I'll make the homepage of this app the page I'm developing, in my case, the details page widget. Supply a mocked subcategory model into this page so we can have mock data while creating it. We'll update the subcategory model to include a list of parts. For example, when they pick a subcategory, there may be different kinds of items under that subcategory that we may want our users to pick from. It will be an array of category part models. Let's go ahead and create a file called category part. It will have for now a name, image name, and a flag to indicate whether it is selected or not. Create the constructor for it. Back in the subcategory model, add a list of category parts called parts. Update the constructor to take the list as well. In our utils, update the mock data structure to include some predefined category parts model corresponding to the subcategory we'll be working with. Populate the parts array with the hard-coded models and fix the imports. For now, we'll be working with the first subcategory and its parts, but this should work as well for any other subcategory and their corresponding parts. Okay, we're ready to start on the details page widget. We'll change it from being a stateless widget to a stateful widget. A stateful widget is implemented by two classes, a subclass of stateful widget and a subclass of state. The details page widget class manages its own state, so it overrides the createState method to create a state object, in our case, the details page state. The framework calls createState when it wants to build a widget. In this example, createState returns an instance of details page state, which I'll implement in the next step. The state class contains the widget's mutable state and the widget's build method. You can choose which approach to use depending on your scenario, but if in doubt, start by managing state in the parent widget. In the build method of the details page widget, start by replacing the placeholder content by the actual widget structure, starting from a root container with alignment center and a main column widget child with a stack as its first child. Inside, add a fixed height container and add a background image using the decoration image property. Use an asset image using the subcategory image name as the reference. Box fitted to cover to take up the whole container surface. Let's work on the gradient piece. I'll simulate it by using a position widget that will fill the stack surface with a container inside, and use a linear gradient on the container via the gradient property. The gradient will start at the bottom and at the top from color black with 0.6 opacity to transparent. Next, let's do another position element to overlay the icon and the labels, which will be laid down inside a row. I'll use this category icon widget for that, passing the corresponding values supplied by the model. To the right of it, I need two items, one on top of the other, so I'll use a column for it. The top one will be a white label with size 20. The bottom one, some sort of badge showing some info. To stay on brand, I'll use the subcategory's color to leverage the category's theme color, and for the pill effect, a border radius of 20. Padding of 10 all around. I'll space them out with a sized box, height 10. Right align the column items, and one of my favorite tricks, spread them apart using the main axis alignment space between. Wrap the row inside a padding to give it room to breathe. And check this out, this is a trick I've seen very little. Did you know that you can add your app bar inside a stack and it will show on top of all of your items and still work as normal? My main app bar takes a theme color, which I want to change arbitrarily. Pass the color and check it out. Let's add the little shopping cart badge as well. Another position widget would do the trick, so let's use it. Add a container widget with a row that contains a text and an icon widget. Anchor it to the right and the top using some values that work for your design. Add a background color to the container via a box decoration, and use it also for applying a border radius of 20 to it. Add a shadow effect to this badge via the box shadow. Some padding where applicable should work. Wait, how will I do this rounded corner on only one side? Simply wrap your whole stack inside a clip or rect widget, then add a bottom left border radius of 50. Nice, we're done with the top part. We're cruising so far. Let's do the bottom piece. Make it take up the rest of the container by initiating with an expanded widget and closing a container widget with a column inside. Make the inner column widget stretch. The column widget children will be a text widget, the top label in my design. Add some padding to it where applicable. Next, add a fixed height container. This will be this small list view that will hold the parts belonging to this subcategory. Look how cool. Just set the scroll direction to horizontal and the items will scroll from left to right. Default is vertical. Add the item count based on how many parts we have, and the item builder callback method to render each of the list view items. Let's test it with a simple text widget. And there they are. Now that we know it's working, let's do the actual widget structure. Each item will have an image on top, a text widget below, and the ability to be selected by showing a border around the image. So let's start from a column widget. Add a fixed height container widget that will hold the image. Apply a border radius of 25 and a background image corresponding to the current part in the iteration. Fit it to cover the container. Add some depth by using a slight shadow effect. The images show, but they're too close. Add a margin of 15 all around. Much better. See, this whole container is just the image portion. Now let's add the label underneath. Use a container with a text widget in it, feeding the corresponding part name, and leverage the subcategory theme color. Labels show, and to match my design, we'll left align them. Let's do it at the parent level in the column widget. Yes, the images have margin, so let's add margin to the labels as well to line them both up, but only left margin. Let's add some interactivity to our list view items by wrapping them inside a gesture detector widget and leveraging the on-tap event provided. We want that when the user taps on one of the images, it highlights it by showing a border all around the image, driven by the isSelected property from the category part model. How do we accomplish this? By using the setState method available in the state class. Inside the setState method is where you state that your widget state changed, or when the value of the properties that will visually affect your interface when re-rendering of this widget occurs changed. In our case, we'll loop through all of our parts and update the isSelected property to true of the part that matches the one we've selected in the iteration, or false otherwise. Nothing happens because there's no UI element that is reading nor depending on the isSelected property yet. Apply a border to the container widget that holds the image and only add it if the corresponding parts isSelected is true, null otherwise. Simple. If the part is selected, add a border, else null it up. When we click on the list view item, we'll trigger the set state, which will change the property in question, and the framework will call the build method again to illustrate those changes. And there it is, simple and straightforward. Click 1, trigger the set state, the widget redraws and only show the border for the one whose isSelected property is true at the time it rendered. Let's move on to the next widget, which will be some kind of value stepper with a plus and minus to increment and decrement the value in the middle. We need a label on top, a label below, so let's use a column for this. The top label will be a text widget, but not any kind of text widget, a rich text widget that will allow us to segment our text content and apply styles to each individual segment. You use it via a text span, which in turn takes children of the same type. Wrap your rich text inside a padding. Looking good so far. The next element will be this container, so we'll use a container with a row and 3 widgets inside. The plus icon on the left, I'll add another rich text widget in the center and split the value and the unit label. I'll hard code everything for now. And on the right, the other icon. Make the middle widget occupy most of the row content by wrapping it inside an expand widget, then center it with a center widget. Add a background color to the parent container widget. Some padding all around wouldn't hurt either. To match my design, I'll add a slide shadow effect. Some margin all around will look nice. I'm missing the rounded corners, so let's just do that. And to reinforce the items inside, I'll still add the space between, although not needed since the expanded took care of that in this particular case. Center the items vertically in the row. Add padding to the center widget that encloses the value, but only bottom. We need a bottom text widget to show the price information. Let's go with a rich text widget for that. I'll use hard-coded values for the time being. Add space between main alignment to spread them apart. Pad the row with some padding where applicable. So far so good. Okay, so these buttons don't do anything. Let's spice things up a bit and trigger the state from them as well. Start by adding some properties in our stateful widget, which we'll conveniently access via the widget property available in the state. Replace the hard-coded values by references to the properties created in our widget. With our properties in place, let's change their values and trigger the set state, so in turn, every build of this widget gets triggered and we see the changes reflected in the next redraw cycle. Make each of the icons interactive by wrapping them inside a gesture detector. Add the corresponding logic to each icon inside the setState method. This will mark the properties as dirty, triggering a rebuild, and we'll see the redrawn widget with the updated value applied. I'll add some quick logic to limit the values being shown, just as a nice to have, just to show you can play with the values being updated and how the rendering is affected by those changes made. Okay, now that we have all the pieces in place, the value stepper and the top and bottom rich text labels conveniently encapsulated inside a column widget. Let's wrap up this design by adding the two bottom buttons. For now, I'll just copy paste one of the buttons in the welcome page for consistency. Make the necessary adjustments like the background color, labels, etc. Copy another one right below and do the same treatment. Let me add a few more colors to my app colors helper class. Okay, I believe I have it pretty close to my original design, and the whole interface is managed by a single widget, all inside a single build method. Now, honestly, this approach is bad, and let me show you why it is. If we put a breakpoint in the build method of the details page widget, every single change made inside the page, like clicking on one of the list view items, clicking plus or minus in their stepper widget, it triggers a rebuild. You might say, but this is good, things are changing and showing accordingly. Yeah, this is okay for a small example, but in the event of having a larger widget structure, this may bring lots of performance problems due to the whole page being rebuilt and thrashed due to the smallest user interaction triggering a rebuild. A widget state can be managed in several ways, but in our case we want each widget to manage their own state. In this example, selecting an item from the list or clicking increment or decrement is an isolated action that shouldn't affect the parent widget or the rest of the UI. So splitting your UI into smaller widgets, each of which handle its own state internally, should be the way to go, where applicable. So how do we split them logically? I believe we have an idea. Let's take the parts list view, for example, and extract it as its own separate widget. The widget will be called category parts list and will receive as input the selected subcategory. Create the file for it and go through the motions of creating a stateful widget for this. Remember, two classes, one that extends stateful widget and overwrites the create state, and one that extends state and overwrites the build method. Paste the content of the widget structure of the list view with the category parts. Add the missing subcategory property that will hydrate this widget. Fix the imports. Now this widget should be able to encapsulate the state within itself, and rebuilds will only be contained within the build method of this widget, without affecting the parent or any sibling widget. Import our newly created widget. Okay, everything seems to be working as before, but let's do the ultimate test. Let's put a breakpoint in the build method of both the parent and this new child widget and see. Okay, parent renders once, as well as its child. Now changes trigger in the child's widget, and as you can see, only the child's widget's build method gets executed, and not the parent's, making this more efficient and concentrated on the widget that indeed changed. Let's proceed to extract the rest of the widget structure into their own widgets. I'll grab the whole unit price widget structure and I want it to be wrapped by a widget called unit price widget. So let's do just that. Create a file called unit price widget and paste the structure in the build method of the state class of this stateful widget. Move the properties here, as well as override the create state. Fix the imports. Import the newly created widget. That was quite simple. And now, for the very ultimate test, add a breakpoint on each of these widgets, the parent and the two sibling widgets we just created. Hit the run and debug. Breakpoint hits the details page, then the category parts list widget, then the unit price widget. A change in the parts widget rebuilds only that widget. A change in the unit price widget rebuilds only that widget too. And that's what I call great widget distribution. But like I did to start off, manage the state at the parent widget level, then move pieces out into their own widgets whenever it makes sense for your particular case. Rebuild the page as a sanity check. I'm still not okay with having to copy paste these buttons, so I'll create my own button for this app, which I'll reuse throughout the app with lots of flexibility. Let's proceed. I'll grab one of these containers as the foundation for my custom app button. Create a new file called theme button and paste the content of the widget structure in question. I make it as a stateless widget as this one won't be manipulating state for now, but I want to make it very flexible by adding lots of properties I can modify on this button like label, color, border, highlight, etc. Paste the structure. Replace the color by the one supplied by the user, referenced by this.color. Same thing with the highlight. I'll change the structure slightly to support adding an icon as opposed to just a text widget. So if an icon is not provided, just do a text widget, else do a row and show the icon, then a space, then the label. Let's take this new widget for a spin right away. Replace the container widget with a theme button. By default, I made it so that it shows green, but you can easily override the color and highlight as well as showing a border, an icon, etc. Add another one and override the color and highlight just to prove my point. Nice. Now I can use these buttons anywhere within my app, staying true to the design and the theme. The rest of the widgets work as expected, so I love the widget composition we achieved in this page widget. Before we forget, let's revert the changes in the main.dart file so we can do a full reload of the app to see the workflow end to end up to this point. Let's also replace the old buttons here in the welcome page widget by our newly created theme button widget. That way we can go full circle in our widget creation journey. And also because of this important reason, whenever you see a widget name with a line strike through, that means it's deprecated. So I suggest you stop using the flat button altogether and as a replacement, use the text button widget instead moving forward. Replace accordingly and apply the necessary properties to match. Run the workflow to the end. Awesome. Love the way our app is coming out, and to think that almost every widget was custom built. Of course, leveraging the layout widgets and a handful of core widgets, I think we've done a pretty good job so far, so kudos to us. I hope you learned a thing or two about how to create your own custom stateful widgets and understood a bit more how the state works and how it gets triggered. I'll drop some links on the description for further reading. In upcoming videos, I will be diving into more robust state management approaches like inherited widget, block pattern, provider, stream builders, etc. But honestly, for simple apps, you can do without these and just use plain old stateful widgets and using setState. In the next video, we'll continue making progress on this app and we'll build a simple and minimalist onboarding page for our app so we can let our users know what this app is all about, and using widgets such as the page view widget to accomplish that. For now, thanks for watching. See you on the next one. That's it for this video, so please stay tuned for more upcoming videos. Hit the subscribe button to stay updated, and please like this video if you found it useful. Thank you so much for watching.